Hi, my name's Kris Bertin, and I was asked by Exile Magazine to read an excerpt of my story, Tom Stone and Company. Tom Stone is a story about trying to figure out what parts of you are intrinsic and unable to be changed. It's a story about being on the wrong side of things, or maybe how there's no right side to be on in the first place. I wrote it because I was a bouncer for 2 years, and I still do it now periodically, and I see all kinds of behavior that doesn't seem beneficial in the least, but people are still engaging in it, and that's really the big question of the story, is how much of what you do is your own, or rather, what do you have a choice in? What's automatic, what's instinct, and just comes automatically. That was a job. Drive, stop, get out, get trash, throw it, stomp it down if you really have to, again and again and again until it's over. Of course, when somebody really dropped the ball garbage-wise, Tom Stone would go and knock at their door whatever time it was. That was part of the job too. Or at least what Tom thought was part of the job. He'd always tell me to wait in the truck, so I'd never get to hear what he'd have to say. I'd see him point a lot at himself and at the truck, or at the mangled TV or the queen-size box spring they were trying to pass off as haulable trash. I always wanted to do that part of the job with him because I knew it was something I was good at, but he said it was more important that one of us stay behind. Who knows what the hell these people are capable of, he'd say. And he was right, I think. Some parts of the run, the really broken down parts, could give you that feeling. The one where you know you entered into something you want no part of. A lady with a baby that's screaming too hard, or an old man living with a young boy that Tom says isn't his grandson. It's not that country people are more fucked up than anyone else. It's just easier to see the really damaged people when they're on a big tract of land with lots of windows instead of a high-rise apartment with locks and curtains and no yard to speak of. The most screwed up were the Cliftons, one of those huge families on a piece of land that had been in the family for generations. People had a farm but did no farming. They always had too much trash for us to take, sometimes as much as 20 bags, but we never said anything about it. There was just too much wrong with the place. Trash everywhere, all around the rundown bungalow, and in the grass and trees and hanging from the scrubby bushes peppered across the place. There were broken beer bottles and dog shit and blown out tires. You get the idea that it would be easier to just take the extra load and move on. It was always bad there, but the worst, the very worst we saw was on a Tuesday morning at maybe 7 o'clock. It was strange to see anybody awake on that leg of our run, but there they were, 12 of them. Great big people in lawn chairs and kitchen chairs, sitting around a burnout fire pit. It was a party that hadn't ended, and they were still going, drinking and smoking cigarettes and dope, even as the sun came up and the kids needed to get to school. They were far enough away from us that we didn't have to talk to them, but they waved and shouted for us to come over. Tom shot me a look, and we acted like we didn't hear, gathered up their cans in silence. He'd always say it wasn't worth it to talk to them, but when I saw them that day, I could see what he was getting at. Even though the garbage run was in a different county than the one we lived in, we'd still heard of the Cliftons, still knew what people said about them. It was your standard fare, diddling kids, smacking women around, getting arrested all the time for all kinds of stuff. It didn't matter if they used grocery bags instead of real trash bags. It didn't matter how much they dumped on us. They were the kind of people you didn't ever want to see, let alone talk to. That day, we thought we were getting off scot-free when one of them, a fat teenage girl in a nightie, ran for the tree line, holding her crotch and mouth at the same time while the family laughed and laughed. Tom turned away for the driver's side, but I saw her crouch down and lift up her skirt in front of everyone, and at the exact same time, fire a jet of green vomit out her mouth like a laser beam, and everyone laughed even harder. Tom and I drove away after that. "These fucking people," Tom said. I remember as we went to the next lot that he had a look on his face that wasn't exactly anger or sadness or even concern, but he kept shaking his head and saying, "Fuck." At the time, I guessed it was about the kids because they had a ton of them, and because I knew he'd grown up in the same kind of situation. I realize now that he was probably just trying to look at them and decide how many degrees of fucked up there was between him and them. And that's my story.